Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This is Charles from the channel Books on Stereo, and we're here today doing another book club episode. We actually have a name. I think we're addicted to audio or audio addicted, but we'll confirm that at a later date. You'll get that all the details on that down the road. But today we're going to be talking about Tryst Venom by Penelope Douglas. Now, this is a high school bully, enemies to lovers, sapphic romance. And to kick us off, I have my great booktube friend here, Taji. Taji, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Charles. Thank you for asking. How are you doing?
Good, I'm doing good. So first off the bat, what are your initial thoughts about Tryst Venom? And we will be getting to spoilers, so I'm sorry. We'll try to warn you when we get to there, but it's gonna get into spoilers pretty quickly. So you have been warned, but Taji, what are your initial thoughts on Tryst Venom?
I was like, it's funny. I was thinking about this and I was like, Charles always puts me on the spot first. He's like, I think he's going to ask me what I think. And I'm be like, daggone it. And quite honestly, I don't know what I think. Okay. Like, let me say that. It definitely is an enemies to lovers. It is a bully romance. It's forced proximity in the sense that, they're in high school, so they're
Mhm.
forced to be together. The main characters are Clay and Olivia. I think that Clay is a spoiled, self centered, bitter, angry girl that has a messed up home life. And because of that, she acts in ways that are really disgusting in my mind. And I don't like her at the beginning. But once you start to understand why she acts out and how much fear she has, and also I'm going to say that this is a coming out story, right?
Mhm.
And so, because she's struggling with coming out and how she thinks she's going to be perceived, she makes really poor, impulsive decisions based on that. But I don't know how I feel because I feel like this was one of those examples for me of angst for the sake of angst. Artificial angst is what I call it, but not really based on reality. But I feel bad about saying that because coming out and struggling with coming out as a high school teenager in a community where you know that you're not going to be accepted and you're going to be ostracized is very, very difficult. So I tried to put myself in the place of these characters and I struggled to do that. And I think that's what I mean, what in terms of like, I'm not sure how I feel. Am I making any sense in what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. Um, I would say I said these girls needed some help. They needed some counseling. They needed some therapy because
It was a hot mess.
what they did to each other in the back and forth and how toxic it got. I'm gonna already say a spoiler. Clay posts a sex tape of Olivia with
Yeah.
one of the coaches at the school, and then Olivia turns around and reposts it just to have the upper hand
And use it as blackmail.
and uses blackmail. So like I think the bully aspects it became really, really toxic and then transitioned over into them actually admitting their feelings for each other.
Mhm.
I thought that transition was a little bit messy.
Very messy.
Um,
And it wasn't sexy. It wasn't done like I've seen some toxic relationships. Like if we look at like Harden and, and what's
mhm.
her name in the what was
Tessa,
it? And Tessa in that series. That was a very toxic relationship. But this just seemed to be like hate sex. Like it was like, I hate you. I'm doing things like I'm throwing food at you. I'm getting into cat fights with you. And then the next thing you know, like we're making out. And I just didn't understand. Like in my mind, these two characters didn't belong together. And I just didn't see that transition. And I didn't even feel the steam and the heat when they had sexy time. Like I was just like, I'm not there for it because I'm still not over the fact that you used the sex tapes against me, that you basically slapped me. We got into a physical altercation. Then, anytime we do get together, when your friends come around, you deny the fact that you even know me. And like, so now I'm your secret, like, kind of slimy thing on the side. And it just, I don't know, it just felt icky to me. Even though I wanted to like this, I felt like it's not that I felt bored, but I felt like this is just wrong on so many levels. There's so many other ways that you could have used the platform of a sapphic romance coming out, struggling with coming out to speak to high school students in a healthy way. This was just an example of it was just all wrong for me. Am I?
mm,
I don't know.
no, I totally get what you're saying. I think from like a plot perspective, it feels like you're jumped into like this is like almost like the middle of a series because you have all the brothers, you have all that backstory going on with Olivia's brothers, and then you have Clay with her family drama, and then you have Callum, and then things get revealed with his character and how he was connected with one of the brothers, but yet there's
Exactly.
no plans, from what I know, to revisit any of those characters ever again. Like Kirsten, Amy. There's like so many characters, and I'm like, you feel like this is like a beginning to a series, or like you were just plopped
Right.
into a series because I had to restart this book once again. I got halfway through and I was like, I need to restart this again
Right.
because Callum's like the proposition that he makes to Olivia doesn't quite make sense.
No.
Like why he's pushing that on when he doesn't really even know that Clay has a thing for Olivia. Maybe
Exactly.
he does at that point. And then her backstory and Olivia's backstory of like wanting to go to Dartmouth and being an actress and wanting to play this very specific role in Romeo and Juliet. It felt there was a lot of things that didn't quite gel well with this book, and especially since it was so long. Like I thought like she would find her groove with these characters and the plot. But then there's there would be things that would be introduced, and I was like, okay, where are we going with this?
Mm.
What are you doing with that? Okay, this is not quite working right here. And it really felt like she was trying to write a sapphic version of one of her other books, like Corrupt, but make it in high school, or Punk 57 or something like that. And it didn't quite work as well, but I do appreciate that a big author like Penelope Douglas wrote something sapphic because there is like a wider discussion in like the booktube community on how some readers will prefer MM, but then will look down upon FF and not really even read FF. So like I have to give Douglas kudos for at least doing that.
I agree with you. And I think we are on the same page because I absolutely felt like I jumped into a world and I paused a moment and said, is this going to tie into Corrupt? Like it feels like it's the same as like Punk 57, where it's like a side character that's a cousin of somebody that's related. And then I was like, well, no, because when I looked, I was like, where are they from? And like, are they from the same state? Like I was trying to make the connection. And then I stopped and said, okay, no. So this is clearly a setup for a larger series. So like Callum and like whatever is going to get they're going to get a book, Amy's going to get a book, Kirsten's going to get a book. But it didn't, like you said, there's no active plans. I think the next world that she's going to go into is the second generation from the Bully series,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that their kids are going to get their book, so she's working on that. So there is nothing in the works for this, but it felt like she did try to recapitulate a already tried and true sort of formula that she plopped in that sapphic feel. And this is one of those instances, and I love Penelope Douglas. Like she was one of my first forays into dark romance. Like, and for some people who don't read dark romance, Penelope is pretty dark. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
her, you know what I mean? And her Corrupt series was that Corrupt was the first dark romance I ever read. And I was like, what the hell? Like, what is this? This blew my mind. But for, Tryst 6 Venom, it was too long. And like I said, the characters didn't seem like they were just burning. She tried to demonstrate that there was this tremendous chemistry and they couldn't live without each other. But it just seemed like when we talk about hate to love, like enemies to lovers, this was hate. Like Clay acted like she hated Olivia and did
Mm-hmm.
everything she could do to torture. And it was almost like part of me said, there's a lot, like we're willing to suspend belief, right? In fantasy and romance, right? And we allow couples, especially in dark romance, where we're a dark, if it's housed under dark, we allow our hero to do stuff to the heroine that you would never under any other circumstances be okay with
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, but you give them a pass because it's dark romance. In this instance, I feel like because they were both female and it was like a dark romance, they even took it to the next level where we would never allow or be okay with a male hero to like get into a physical altercation and assault and fight with his heroine and then expect that like in 100 pages they're in sleeping together and we're okay with that, but that's what happened here. So I was like, no, it doesn't work for me. Like it's never okay to put hands on no matter how mad or upset. And even like more than halfway through the book where they were already getting to be on the same page and they were at the diner together and then Callum shows up, that's when she like throws food at her and then the other one dumps her drink on her and then and then Callum is like, clear up the camera, there's gonna be another cat fight. Like it was playing on old tropes like wet t-shirt contest type stuff with like
Hmm.
a sapphic feel. And I was like, no, this is just, I just felt uncomfortable and I didn't like it.
Oh, that's unfortunate because I 100% get what you're saying because like I do 100%. I don't know where I'm going with this point, but it did like I totally agree with you. Like it didn't quite work in this genre because I feel like Penelope Douglas didn't quite understand her two characters. I
Mm,
think when she tried to tackle, like she tried to do the coming out story, but flip it on its head because Penelope Douglas always wants to do something that pushes the envelope.
hmm
And I don't think you really see a ton of sapphic FF romances out there.
mm-mm,
And so I think that's what she was trying to do. She's trying to push boundaries a little bit, push the characters a little bit farther than what we would have seen in like an MF romance.
mm-hmm,
And I'm wondering if that was just intentional to like
mm,
push boundaries because I do think like I don't even know if it's like conscious, but there is like a slight double standard because I bet
mm,
you if this was like MM and they kind of did some of these things to each other, or even in MF, depending on like
mm,
which author this is coming from,
mm,
I don't think it would have been received with so much criticism,
mm,
if in my mind. But for this book in particular, I think the transition from because it went from bully to enemies and then to lovers, and I felt like that third part didn't
mm,
quite mesh with me.
mm,
That really didn't quite mesh with me because the way we opened up with Callum's proposition, I was like,
mm.
how would Callum even know like that was a thing between these two girls because they absolutely hated each other.
Right, right,
It's like
right.
little things like that that I feel like this should have been a series, or we should have like said like, hey, you're gonna get more books in the series because so much backstory could have been removed. And
Mm,
this book made me think of like this was like really like a Mariana Zapata book, in a lot of ways, but it was just more spice. Like you
yeah.
spend excruciating amount of time with these characters,
And I still don't feel like I really,
14 hours,
and I
and you
don't
don't
know.
really. All you know is that they both play a sport together. I forgot what the sport is. One wants to go to Dartmouth to become an actor, an actress. I
And
don't
then
even know why.
one is potentially going to go to mortuary school. I was like, what the
She
hell? Why?
does.
Like,
She
why?
works in a mortuary at the end.
She does. Like,
I was
she's.
like, what the?
I was like, I didn't get that, and like, it was just, and there was a lot, supposedly like, death of a sibling and loss. There was a lot of trigger warnings for like, suicide and death of
Mm-hmm.
a child and all that kind of stuff like that was
Mm-hmm.
thrown in there. And then you've got the brothers. I actually was more interested in hearing the brothers banter and like hearing Macon's story. So Macon was the oldest, and so when
Oh,
the
man.
parents passed away on Olivia's side or Liv's side, her brothers, that's how they became Tryst six Venom. So they were the six of them. Those five brothers were the ones who basically raised, Olivia from the time that she was young. And so I really wanted to hear Army's story. I wanted to hear who his baby's mama was. I wanted to hear I was more interested in that than I was in this nonsense between Olivia and Clay. And I was just like, Clay, I was like, girl, you got to get it figured out. And I don't have to. And Olivia did get to the place where she was just like, I don't have time,
Where
but
she put him?
she kept going back to her. And I was like, if anybody treated me the way that Clay did, it was like, you want to talk about hit it and quit it? It was like Olivia would get into this situation with Clay where they would have this sexual encounter. And then whenever anybody found out or she thought somebody would know or she felt uncomfortable, she would treat Olivia like crap. And Olivia kept taking her back. And I was like, this is toxic. I'm not okay with this,
Yeah, yeah, they were a very toxic relationship. I think the story I was most excited for was Callum's. If we got his book, when I
Oh,
heard that little like he was involved with one of her brothers, I was like,
like,
and it's like, and like we can't do anything to him because he could turn in one of our brothers. I was like, hold up,
because it was like what, like 14 and 20 or 15.
yeah, it was like a year or two before they
Yeah,
were seniors, so he was like probably like a sophomore.
it was
I
a
was
huge
like,
gap. I was like, now that is a book I want to read.
so that's the story.
This right here, you done made me spend 14 hours to get to the one I really want to get to. I'm mad at you now, Penelope.
Even
But
Kirsten, her unexpected side relationship with, I forgot which brother it was. But then
I,
like she made a joke like she had her like her bob on
yeah,
hand. She's like,
yeah,
you can't do it for me. I'm gonna hand and like she's trying to help her friend Clay and she's like, Kirsten, stop thinking about sex. She's
exactly.
like, okay, I'm back. Like, what
Yeah,
you mean?
she was cute. She was cute. You know, and the other thing that told me that I wasn't really feeling these characters is I know that there was another booktuber I was listening to and they don't like epilogues. And I was like, how can you not like epilogues? Like epilogues like tell the whole story. Like it wraps it up
Oh,
really nicely. And I want to see 3 months, 6 months, you know, a year out to see what's happening.
I
And
didn't
in this
care about this epilogue.
didn't care. I was in with the epilogue and I was like, what? I was like already on to my next. I didn't even care. I was like, they did what? And they're where? And you were like, she went to mortuary school. I was like, she did? I was like, I don't care. No, not for me.
Oh my goodness. I think the crux of the problem is this was way too long. But I think there need to be a component of like either one of them going to some type of therapy or counseling to work through their issues because both of these girls do deal with like some very deep trauma
They do.
that until they are able to really rectify that trauma on their end, even for Olivia,
Yeah.
they really need to rectify that trauma before they can enter in like somewhat of a healthier space
And a part of
in that way.
their past trauma is the reason that they had a lot of conflict currently because something would happen
Mm-hmm.
like with Clay, her parents are having, you know, a lots of I was even more interested in the parents' book. I wanted to get their book to see like what was
Yeah,
like
because they're working to get back together, but in the epilogue.
exactly. So they were like, you know, the dad was cheating and sleeping with other people, and the mom like has her own backstory with the grandmom. And so every time the parents got into some kind of altercation or conflict, then Clay would act out towards Olivia because she was like the safe space where she could be able to express that. But Olivia
Mm-hmm.
doesn't know that. And who is going to tolerate that time and time again? And so it just happened so many times that it was like, girl, you got to get it together. So I
Yeah.
don't, and I'm still thinking about, and this might not be politically correct, and I wonder if I should say it or not, but I really want to be honest with viewers. Like, I do feel like we allowed certain things to occur in this book because they were two females. And I think if it were two males or a male and a female, and this type of physical toxic relationship in this day and age that we live in, there might be some more criticism around that. And I don't think, for me personally, because I read some pretty dark authors, right? I
Mm-hmm.
love Tilly Cole, I love Pepper Winters, I love Amo Jones. Like that is like the crescendo of dark, right? And I'm okay. And I don't have trigger warnings, like triggers. It doesn't stuff doesn't bother me. But I was really shocked at because I was thinking, would this be a good example if I like knew somebody that was in high school that was struggling to come out and having a hard time? Would I recommend this book?
Oh hell
No,
no.
no. There are so
Yeah.
many other better examples of, you know, Kay wrote an amazing story about, it was a little short story about
Mm-hmm.
you know, and it also, I can't remember the name of it, but it also talked about illness and
Mm-hmm.
diabetes. And you know that which one I'm talking about? Like, stay with me,
Yeah.
ask me.
Always like it's like I know it has stay in the title. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was a very cute MM, like, you know, coming out, being comfortable, also loss of a sibling, you know, and Kate did a really, you could tell she did her homework and she really knows that genre. She reads a lot of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, MM romances. And so this, I just felt, I don't know, like I felt like she wanted to write in the sapphic field, in this genre, because it's like, you know, pop or whatever, and she wanted to make sure that she was representing, but fell short. She could have done a better job, in my opinion. You know, I tend not to be hard on authors in this sense, but in this way, I feel like she could have done better.
Yeah, I think you brought up a really great point about reading very extensively in the genre that you're trying to write and how it definitely comes across because I love the Briggs Fairy Bay series by Kay Webster and Misty Walker. And
Mm,
they absolutely nail those dynamics in those books between those all those different couples and all the different pairings. And it made me think you can't just I think a lot of times we want to transcribe like the heteronormative like MF roles
yeah,
in the LGBTQIA space. Like you can get away with it to some degree in the MM because at least like the sex kind of like is reminiscent of what you would get in
right,
an MF book. But for
right.
FF, it's a totally different ballgame of how you write the dynamic between these two characters because you really just can't just make one alpha female. And I think they try to do that a little bit to this extent, tried to
And then,
ascribe those roles to these two different girls, and they really didn't. It really didn't match. Like Olivia didn't give me like the whole tough girl biker, super. I was kind of like they're kind of picturing her as like kind of like the jock-ish type
yeah,
character, and it didn't quite work. So I felt maybe a little bit some of the things that we thought were off was mainly because we don't know. I don't think Penelope Douglas did a ton of research
mm-hmm.
and has read a lot of FF, read a lot of FF like in preparation for this book because I didn't really like Credence by
You did.
Penelope Douglas, and that was another like her first try at reverse harem
Mm,
in a way, but it really kind of wasn't in my opinion. Like she just like got with each of them and then chose one at the end.
yeah.
So I think there's a little bit of research that wasn't quite done with, especially with this book,
Mm-hmm.
into that sapphic genre. And I do want to see more sapphic books being written. So I don't want to be too harsh on this book because I want more books in that genre. But I definitely want to see some own voices if possible and
Yes.
see how they would handle like what would own voices sapphic bully romance look like.
I agree. I agree. And just to the point, like I really love Penelope Douglas as an author. Credence, I loved. I agree that Credence isn't a reverse. It's like it's classed as a reverse harem, but it's not necessarily a reverse harem as in some of the other reverse harems that we've read. But because I hold her to such a high standard, and because I like expect greatness when she puts out something, I'm going to buy it because her name is attached to it, then my expectation of her is that she does do the research and make sure that she's representing in a certain way. So I expected more from her. And like, even though I give her a pass, like I'm like, okay, I didn't care for this one. That's okay. I'm sure the next one is going to be great. And I agree with you 100% that I want to see more sapphic romances because I want to make sure that the representation is there for, all different types. I love menages. I want to see more, I want to see more trans, books about trans couples and trans relationships, and not just like, the standard of what you think as a part of the LGBTQI community, but rather like a trans female with a, heteronormative male, if you will, or vice versa. Like I want to see that mixed up, and I want to see it done in really representative ways that make sense and that represent the community as a whole. So I guess I'm a little bit harder, like I said, on it because I really respect Penelope Douglas. I really like her. I expected like her name was on. I was like, this is gonna be good. And I'm kind of tired of Charles saying my recommendations are crappy. So I was like, daggone it, here we go again. Another one that Charles is gonna be upset with. So
Okay. So that brings us to the dreaded time, the ratings. And since I put you on the spot first, I will give my rating first. I think I'm very fair. I give it a 3.
I gave
How
it
about you?
a 3.
See, and no one can say I'm harsh on my ratings. I am fair.
No,
I thought it was fine.
When you gave that Jay Kristoff book a 1, I was mad at you because at least the art deserved more than that. So that he wrote the daggone book. You got to give it.
Hey,
give a 1.
he did deserve more than that. He could have got a 0, but 0 rating is not a rating on Goodreads.
Oh my God. I'm so entertained. I'm so entertained. I can't wait till we get like when you're like the dreaded part. It's the entertaining part because I want to see because we were like 10, 2, 5,
0.
9. We're just like, but we match up. When we match up, we match up well. So that's good. So yes, I 100% agree. And one of the other things, Charles, I just wanted to add, I have been doing an alternate rating scale. And we didn't talk about this before, but I want to ask you about this. So I do an alternate rating scale on my channel because people have asked about spice. So now I'm also rating according to spice level and angst. And so overall, like I think like the spice for me, because I didn't believe in these characters like together, was a 2. Thank you. It was like a 2 for sure. Like I was just like, okay.
Why are they so obsessed with shower heads?
I don't know. I didn't.
That's the only thing they kept every time it happened in the shower.
It was with the shower head and then with the double-headed toy. I was like,
yep.
Okay. And then overall, like the angstiness level of the book, like there was a lot of artificial angst, and I just was like, it's annoying. So it was kind of angsty. So I gave it a 4 for like the angst level. What do you think?
That's about right.
Yeah, it's about right. But like still overall, it was a 3. So I'm glad we're
Mhm.
on the same page on that. So that's my thoughts on that.
Hey, that is good. I think this was a really fascinating discussion because I even thought this book was gonna be a surefire because it's Penelope Douglas. Like I thought I was gonna love it, but then I read it, I was like, oh,
That was a
okay. But let us know in the comments down below if you have read this book. What do you think about it? Do you disagree? Do you agree with our comments if you have read the book? And like I said, these are our opinions and our opinions alone. So if you have loved the book, I'm so happy that you loved the book, but it's just our opinions. But thank you guys again so much for watching. Thank you again, Taji, for joining me and talking about this book. And I'll catch you guys with another video. Bye, everyone.